What is up, Knicks fans? Welcome back to yet another episode of Fireside Knicks with your host, Dylan Backer. And tonight, the New York Knicks defeated the Charlotte Hornets and stayed undefeated in the preseason. It is their fourth consecutive victory in the preseason as well, with just one game left remaining. And they won by a score of 111 to 105. Now, this game, all the Knicks starters sat this one out. Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Karl-Anthony Towns did not play. We didn't find that out until about an hour before tip-off. That's why OG Anunoby is in the thumbnail, so just ignore that. But other than that, the bench guys got to play in this game, and it was a big opportunity for Tom Thibodeau to really see what these guys can do, and they really impressed me. The Hornets were playing like all of their regular guys. They started pretty much all their starters. LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller actually played the second most minutes, out of everyone on the Hornets. So those guys got a lot of burn, and the Knicks bench, they cooked them. They killed them. So I'm really happy about that. I think it's a positive takeaway right there off rip because, there's been obviously a lot of questions about this bench unit this year and what they are capable of. And I think tonight they really showed a lot of potential and a lot of chemistry. I thought there were a lot of positives I can take away from that, which I'm going to get into. But first things first, I think the biggest storyline that came out of this game was Landry Shamet. He suffered a shoulder injury in the third quarter. It didn't look pretty good. It looked like he might have separated his shoulder. Of course, I'm not a doctor and I'm not guessing that. We don't have an official word on it just yet. But it did not look good in real time. He was in a lot of pain, and he did not return to the game after he, went to the locker room from that. So I really hope he's okay. I hope he's going to be all right for, the season opener and stuff like that. Because this is a guy who's on a non-guaranteed contract, but he had a pretty good chance to make the rotation. So, if this is a serious injury, that's going to be a massive blow, not just for him individually, but also for the Knicks, because they need that kind of depth. They need a guy like him to be able to just come in the game and get buckets up from the three-point range and stuff like that. So really hope he's going to be all right and hope it's nothing serious, but until then, we'll just have to wait and see. But moving on to the game. So as I mentioned, the starters sat this one out. The starting five in this game was McBride, Shamet, Payne, Sims, and Precious Achiuwa. Achiuwa was probably the most impressive out of any Knick tonight. 20 points, 16 rebounds, 3 assists, 8 of 15 from the floor, 2 of 3 from 3. If he's going to be, like our backup power forward per se, or backup big man, whichever role it's going to be, he's going to need to be willing to take more shots like he did tonight. And I think he did really well. I mean, he's had his moments where he's kind of struggled to put the ball on the deck and really kind of create his own shot, but I thought tonight he was really aggressive attacking. Of course, he hit those 2 threes, which is always a pleasant sign to see from a guy that, like I just mentioned, you want to have someone that can floor space a little bit in that second unit in the front court, and Achiuwa was doing that. Now, I know three-pointers are not exactly his strong suit, and that's okay. But if he's willing to take shots more often and willing to kind of create for himself, that's all I can really ask for. Because, the bench unit's going to have a lot of guards in it anyway, so you want to have a guy that's aggressive inside as well, and I think Achiuwa did just that tonight. I was really happy with that. But the next thing I want to talk about are the rookies, the 2024 draft class for the Knicks, especially that played tonight. They were amazing. I mean, Ariel Hukporti might be playing his way into a standard NBA contract. Right now he's on a two-way deal, which is, one that you play for the G League for and also split time in the NBA, but I think he might get a standard deal at this point. I think he's really playing his way into it. Tonight he had 8 points, 5 rebounds in 22 minutes, 4 of 6 from the floor. He had 2 really, really nice posterizer dunks, especially one on Nick Richards. That was an insane play. And seeing how athletic he is and how, mobile he is on both ends of the floor, I think he could really play a strong role in the bench. I really do. I'd even argue he might be a little more impactful than Jericho Sims. And I know Jericho Sims did have a pretty good game. He had 10 rebounds and 7 points in 20 minutes played. But something about Hukporti's athleticism and his hustle, it really makes me feel like he deserves an opportunity. And I think he's playing his way into one. The Knicks don't have a lot of center depth as it is. And I think Hukporti could really kind of, give the second unit a little bit of a spark a little bit. I don't think he's going to be anything spectacular, but I do think he's kind of earned the right to possibly get an opportunity. I don't know if he's going to get a contract or a standard NBA deal or even make the rotation even if he were to get a standard contract, but I think he's really played a very strong preseason overall, and I think he's deserving of it. I do. Of course, I'm not in charge of those decisions, but judging from what I've been seeing from him so far, I'm really impressed. This was a guy who was the number 58 pick in the draft, the very last pick. at that point, it could end up being a steal if he ends up playing a big part in the rotation at some point. Of course, that's a long ways from now, and I'm just kind of, basing it off of a preseason game against the Hornets. It sounds kind of ridiculous when I say it this way, but, again, these are NBA players. It's an NBA team they played against, so very impressed with what Huck Porty did tonight. I really hope that in the final preseason game on Friday, he gets another opportunity to really shine. And who knows, maybe Thibodeau will be convinced that this guy can not only get a contract, but actually play a good amount of minutes. Because who knows, maybe we'll see a backup front court of Achua and Hukporti. Especially with this new Shaman injury going on too. There's a chance that the second unit could be like Payne, McBride, Achua, and Hukporti. And I mean, that would be fine. Yes, it's missing a wing, but you're probably going to have Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby running that unit anyway, so you have a complete lineup right there. So I think that could be a real possibility. Of course, we'll just have to wait and see on that. But moving on to some of the other guys. Pacome Dadier, the Knicks' first-round pick from France, that many thought was just going to be a draft and stash, but apparently he's not. He's still with the Knicks, so it looks like he's going to try to compete for a way to get onto the roster at some point. I don't think he's going to make the rotation at all, honestly, but, aside from all of that, tonight against the Hornets, he really impressed me. I had never really watched much of this guy, I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't know much about him at all, entering the draft, and of course, with the limited amount of film I've gotten to see of him since he got drafted. Tonight, though, he really showed me a lot. I mean, 28 minutes of action, 6 of 11 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, and all 16 of his points in the second quarter. I mean, during that period, he was just on a heater. He had a 4-point play as well at one point. He was being aggressive in so many different areas. I was impressed. I was like, I didn't know he was capable of this kind of stuff. Now, I know a lot of, you don't accidentally get drafted in the first round, so I'm not like, thinking that this guy was going to be not that good. But I didn't really know much about him, and we've seen in years past when teams take foreign players and then they don't really do much in the NBA level. It happens all the time, right? I was hoping Dadier wouldn't be one of those guys that would occur to. Of course, I'm rooting for the guy. Of course, not saying I'm not. I want to see what this guy is capable of, and if he's capable of doing that at the NBA level on a consistent basis, then who knows? Maybe the Knicks found something in him. Again, I don't think he's going to play any significant minutes this season. Of course, unless injuries come about. But I do think I don't think we can necessarily rule out the possibility of him having a pretty impactful role at some point. Maybe not this season, but in the years ahead. We got to remember the kid is only, I think, like 18 or 19 years old. He's a very young kid. Obviously he took a risk by coming straight to the NBA at that age, but at the end of the day, I thought for his Garden debut, or unofficial Garden debut, if you will, since the preseason, he really impressed me. And I think he impressed a lot of guys in the Knicks coaching staff too. And who knows, maybe we'll end up seeing him a little bit more in the final preseason game. I expect the starters to get a lot of burn in Friday's preseason game, which is their last one before the season opener. But at the same time, I do expect some bench guys like, Dadier and Hukporti to also play quite a bit after what they just did tonight against Charlotte. And then the last rookie I want to get to is Tyler Kolek. This is the guy who we've been talking about a lot over this preseason. He had those 2 very impressive games to start the preseason, both against Charlotte and Washington. And then, he didn't play against Minnesota. So then I think a lot of us started to assume at that point that he probably wasn't going to make the rotation off rip just because he didn't play. It was a coach's decision, not like he was injured or anything like that. Plus, like, most of the rotational guys played in that Minnesota game. So it seems like that game is probably the best one to look at when really trying to project what the rotation is going to look like. But Kolek in this game against Charlotte, he was inefficient shooting. He was 2 of 9 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3. That's not encouraging, of course, but the encouraging part was that he was very effective at other areas of the floor. He had 7 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists, which was a team high. Now, again, the shooting, you want it to be better because you're not expecting him to get 8 rebounds and 9 assists every single night. This is a pretty small guard, but at the same time, it's nice to see that even despite the poor shooting, it wasn't affecting his defense or his rebounding, his hustle, passing, all that stuff. Because we've seen players time and time again have poor shooting nights, and it affects everything else that they are doing on the floor. Right? I think Julius Randle is a good example of that. R.J. Barrett's another example of that. When players would have rough nights, and then they become zeros not only offensively but defensively. Kolek was still doing everything impactful in every other area of the floor despite the bad shooting, which is always a positive to see, and I think Tom Thibodeau can take away from that's something really encouraging about the kid. He's still trying to adjust to the NBA, of course. He played 4 years in college, so He's an older guy. He can quickly adapt, but still, he's still trying to learn the NBA, of course. And I think really this was his first big test because the first 2 games of the preseason, he shot the ball pretty well. He was involved in the playmaking, of course, but maybe not to the same level of 9 assists. He was getting, I think he had 1 assist in one game and then 5 in the other one. Which, again, those are solid games. But this game I think was a test for him because of the bad shooting. How are you gonna perform on everything else despite not shooting the ball well? I think he passed that test. I do. Of course, again, it's just the preseason. But again, for these rookies, it means a lot. For guys like McBride and Achua, they're already shoo-ins to make the rotation, right? So it doesn't, you look at how they play and you go, okay, they had a good game, they did pretty good, but we already know they're going to be playing in the regular season. When you're looking at like Kolek and Hukporti and guys like that, you're really watching them deep down because you really want to see how they perform under the pressure of the NBA. Yes, it's the preseason, but it is still an NBA capacity, and especially at Madison Square Garden, where even in the preseason, they kind of give you a playoff atmosphere if the Minnesota game was a good example of that. So, either way, I think that really these rookies, especially from the draft class, really put on an impressive performance, and I think it was really awesome to see, just to watch those guys play and actually play well together. We see oftentimes, you try to play guys together and it just doesn't work out. But playing those 3 rookies together for a lot of those minutes, I mean, they were really good in the second quarter especially. I mean, that was like the best quarter of the game, if you ask me. They were down after the first quarter, and then they responded with 41 points in the second quarter as a team. That's awesome. I mean, of course, we can't expect that even if they play in the regular season together. We can't expect those same kind of results, of course, every single night. But seeing how they were able to respond to, a bad quarter, a bad shooting quarter at that, they didn't shoot the ball very well tonight as a team. 43% from the field, 35 from 3. It's okay, but it's not that good at the same time, right? But watching again the rookies, the way they were able to mesh together and play together and have some good moments, that's always encouraging. And I think it's going to kind of make Tom Thibodeau have some tough choices to make, especially with this Shamet injury. One of these rookies might find a way into the rotation. Who knows? Honestly, I think at this stage, the rookie that has the best chance to make the rotation is Ariel Hukporti, just because of the Knicks' lack of center depth as it is. And seeing, too, that there was a lot of minutes in this game where Achua was the power forward. In fact, he started at power forward in this game. He didn't start at center. So it seems like Thibodeau was kind of trying to experiment. Can he play Precious Achua at the power forward off the bench? He might walk away from this game saying yes, he can, after seeing how he played today and seeing how aggressive he was in his shot taking. In fact, Achua took the 3rd most shots on the team. He took 15 shot attempts. So I think seeing that is always encouraging as well. So there's going to be some interesting decisions to make going forward. But again, there's still one more preseason game, and it's against Washington on Friday. That's going to be, I think that game's going to be interesting because I fully expect the starters to play in that one. I don't think he's going to sit all 5 starters again. I think he's going to let those guys play. But for how long is the real question. Is he going to play those starters for most of the first half? Is he going to play them for most of the game like he did against Minnesota? Is he going to give the bench a lot of burn again? Is he going to give Hukporti, Kolek, Dadier a lot of minutes, given that it might be their last opportunity to really make a case to enter the rotation? Who knows? Those are a lot of unknowns that we won't really know until Friday. But guys, I don't have much else to say about this game. It was a nice win, but again, it's preseason. These wins, the outcome, of course, doesn't mean much. Really, I think we're mostly just keeping an eye on the guys that aren't necessarily shoo-ins to make the rotation. Like the first couple games and stuff, and especially the Minnesota game, we were looking at like how Brunson and Towns are as a duo, how Bridges and Anunoby are defensively. Josh Hart's been a big storyline too because he's only taken 4 shot attempts and hasn't scored a point yet, right? But this game was like the one to really watch all the rookies and the bench play and see how those guys are going to look, which I think is honestly the biggest game so far in the preseason, just given that because there is obviously big questions about this bench. Nothing is certain. There's a lot of concerns that people have about the bench. I think tonight, though, they really showed that they can play well together when given the opportunity. But again, it's the preseason. I'm not going to draw a final conclusion on that just yet. But guys, like I said, I don't have much else to say about this game. The Knicks got the win. They're 4-0 in the preseason. They have best record in the preseason. Obviously, preseason records do not mean anything at all whatsoever, but It's always nice to see the Knicks win, right? No matter when they're playing. So that's that. And then, their final preseason game is Friday against Washington, like I said. And then they'll gear up for the season opener against the Boston Celtics, which is next Wednesday. And that is also their rig night, so that should be interesting too. Maybe the Knicks can spoil that. That would be awesome. But guys, we really hope you enjoyed this video. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, of course, this YouTube page that you are watching the video on. You can follow my personal Twitter account as well. It is right there on the screen. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.